All right, thank you guys for being here. Today we are doing the nutrition workshop for FitTrip. How's FitTrip going? Woohoo! Awesome. And fantastic enthusiasm. Thank you so much, like I said, for being here. I'm Sarah Shanahan.
And I'm Rachel Bear.
We are both dietitians with Good Measure Meals. And today we would like to focus on sort of discussing your fueling needs based on your activity type. We are going to go over calculating your very personal macronutrient needs. Does anyone know what a macronutrient is?
Vitamins?
Not vitamins. You're in the right family. Any wild guesses from this side of the room?
Carbohydrates?
Yes, that's one.
Protein.
Protein, that's two.
Fat.
Fat is three. What are they?
Macronutrients.
They are macronutrients. Macronutrients are things that we need in larger quantities. And they are things that actually provide us with calories. So there's one other thing that we consume that provides us with calories that I didn't mention, and it's not a macronutrient.
Alcohol.
Thank you, alcohol. So we're not really going to talk about that today, but we are going to learn about our personal macronutrient needs. So the carbohydrates, the proteins, the fats, the things that we need to fuel our body. And then we're going to talk about those specifics for exercise. So the fueling and hydration specifics, because you guys are putting in a lot of work in the gym, right? We want to make sure you're taking care of that. And then last, tools for success. And the thing that's really neat about our nutrition talk this year is it's actually a workshop. So you've all gotten a handout, worksheet that we are going to be filling out as we go through today. And you should have all brought your completed metabolic rate printout, right? Okay, fantastic. So keep all this stuff handy. Having a pen and a calculator is going to be very important too. Phone is great for a calculator since we all carry those around with us all the time. So let's quickly go over those things that we just learned are called macronutrients. So carbohydrates, protein, and fat, or protein, carbohydrates, and fat, as they are listed up here, are the things, again, that we need in large quantities, and they are the things that provide our body with fuel or calories or energy. You will probably hear us talk about those things interchangeably. So protein. What kind of foods have protein in?
Meat.
Meat. It's the first one we always think about, right?
Dairy.
Dairy has some protein in it, things that come from animals. Protein is very important for tissue growth and repair. Okay, so what's one of our goals of FitTrip?
Gain muscle.
Gain muscle. So our two big goals, lose fat, gain muscle. To gain muscle, muscle is a tissue, we have to consume protein. We just want to make sure today that you guys are consuming an appropriate amount of protein. Protein also, once it's in our body, has some very important roles in transport. It also has some roles in forming enzymes as well as hormones. And then in general, we want to focus on our leaner and plant-based sources of protein. Does anyone know what some plant-based sources of protein are?
Soy.
Soy is a great example.
Beans.
Beans and legumes, great example. Do what? Nuts have some protein in them, absolutely. There's some grains, actually whole grains have a little bit of protein in them too. And then lastly, there are 4 calories per gram of protein. So if you flip over a nutrition facts label on a food item and it says 1 gram of protein per serving, you can know that 4 calories are coming from that 1 gram of protein. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's move on to carbohydrate. What kind of foods have carbohydrate?
Bread.
Breads, grains, pasta, fruit, cookies. What else do cookies usually have in them? Sugar is a carbohydrate, actually. So yes, but cookies also have a lot of fat, which we're going to get to in a second. So carbohydrates seem to be ones that rolled off your tongue real fast, right? Protein took a little bit longer to get to. We all think about carbs. Carbohydrates have gotten a very bad rap, unfortunately. But carbohydrates are so important for what you guys are setting out in with FitTrip. So whether you are going to be working out for a long time, as long as you are, or as hard as you're going to be in FitTrip, or if it's just sort of a day-to-day thing after FitTrip ends, carbs are very important for your quick, easy energy. So if anyone has done a mini nutrition consult with any of our dietitians in any of the clubs, you've probably learned this. And if you have already and need a refresher, it's what we're going to be here for. So carbohydrates give your brain the best source of energy, and they give your body, again, that quick, easy energy. The reason why it's so quick is that we start to digest carbohydrate once we start chewing food, where the fat and the protein digestion take a lot longer. It basically has to go through your entire stomach before you start getting the energy to use from those sources. Carbohydrate is also very important because it helps prevent breaking down muscle to fuel your body. So we store carbohydrate in our body, we store fat in our body. We don't store protein in our body, it's actually incorporated into tissues. We just learned that it's important for tissue development, right? So if we deprive our body of carbohydrate and or of enough energy or calories or fuel to do the work that we want to do, our body will start breaking down fat to use for fuel. Kind of a good thing. One of the other goals of FitTrip is to lose body fat, but it will not exclusively go to our fat stores. We will also start breaking down our stored muscle or lean mass to get protein to fuel our body. So providing your body with a little bit of carbohydrate actually helps preserve your muscle. So it will also be very important in your muscle building. So protein's important, but carb has an important role too. We mentioned some of our carb sources. We all think of bread and grains and pasta and rice first, right? But we actually have some really great, what we like to call health promoting sources of carbohydrate. Whole grains, fruits, vegetables, beans and legumes, and then we like to focus on our lower fat dairy sources. And just like protein, carbohydrate has 4 calories per gram. So again, if you looked at a nutrition facts label and it said 1 gram of carb, you're going to get 4 calories of energy from that. The one that really differs in our role here is fat. Fat, we all talk about fat, we think about body fat a lot. What does fat do to our food?
Tastes good.
It makes it taste good. What happens when you get a fat-free thing? Yeah, we usually have to, it's not good. We usually have to add some other stuff to it. So it's very important for flavor. Dietary fat, the fat that comes in our food, makes our food taste good, is different than body fat. Body fat, actually, who knows how we get body fat? I know someone in this room knows how we get body fat.
Eat too much.
When you consume too many calories. So when you eat in excess of your caloric needs, no matter what it is, protein, carbohydrates, or fat, your body is going to process it, and what it doesn't need to use for energy right away, it's going to store as body fat that we can use in times when we don't have enough to eat. So whether it's just been a long break between breakfast and lunch, or lunch and dinner, or you are actually in a period of famine when you don't have enough food to eat, we are able to live on our body fat. So it also has a very important role. Body fat also has a role in insulation and protection of our organs, as long as it's in a healthy range. When our organs get too surrounded by excess body fat, they actually don't function as well. And then, like I said, that stored fuel source, which is very important. So I just wanted to be clear that body fat and dietary fat are not the same. Eating foods with fat in them does not make your body fat. Everyone clear? Okay. So what does make your body fat?
Calories.
Excess calories. Oh, I like hearing that. Now, there's a bunch of different kinds of fat. So we have our saturated fats, we have our unsaturated fats, we have trans fats. This is how I like to remember this. Saturated fats come primarily from our animal sources. They are not as good for our heart. Unsaturated fats come primarily from our plant-based sources. They are better for our heart. Okay? There's some crossover in there, and you're going to hear some things that sound like a plant, and they actually have saturated fat. But that is a great way to remember it. So we want to focus on those things that have more heart-healthy fat, those unsaturated fats that come from plants. Which, if you go back to our protein, we wanted to focus on leaner and plant-based sources of protein, right? Some of the reason is that we're going to get heart-healthier fat from that. Fat is also, again, very important, but we want to make sure that our balance is correct and that our overall ratio is correct. Here's the other tricky thing. Fat is more calorically dense than carbohydrates and protein. Everyone see down here how many calories per gram fat has? So it's more than twice what carbohydrate or protein has. So you get 9 calories per gram. So again, 1 gram of fat on a nutrition facts label equals 9 calories of energy. So that's a big difference. That is the reason why like a small handful of almonds or other nuts seems like it has so many calories. It's more calorically dense because it has a higher fat content. Any questions about the macronutrients? Okay, so these are the acceptable macronutrient distribution ranges that are set by the Food and Nutrition Board of the Institute of Medicine. You notice with these ranges that there's kind of a big gap in between them. The reason that these ranges are set is because they have if we stay within these ranges, we have a lower risk of chronic illness, okay? But you will notice our protein needs go from 10 to 35%, big gap. Carbohydrate, 45 to 65%, big gap. Same thing with fat, 20 to 35%. So this is what we're gonna help you guys all break down today on an individual level. With our carbohydrate, I just want to make a note that that higher into that range, the 60, 65, maybe even 55%, should typically, not always, but typically be reserved for a more athletic population and those that are focusing more on endurance athletics, where you need a lot of that carbohydrate to help you function. And we're going to get to sports nutrition in a bit. And then saturated fat, remember, is the kind that's not as good for your heart. So we want our total fat to be 20 to 35% of our total calories, but we want our saturated fat intake to be less than 10% of our total calories. So we're going to teach you how to do that math too. Calories in and calories out. Everyone heard of this thing called energy balance? When your calories in and your calories out equal, your energy is in balance, your weight stays the same. If you want to switch that balance, you have to swap out one for the other. So either the in needs to go up or down, the out needs to go up or down. Calories in are easy. They come from food and beverages. Okay, we've already determined that's where our fuel comes from, right? Calories out are a little bit more complex and kind of fascinating. So we have this thing called a basal metabolic rate, which is what was calculated on your metabolic rate sheet here using a formula. Your basal metabolic rate is what we talk about. We talk about our metabolism, okay? Mine's fast, mine's slow, etc. So your basal metabolic rate is actually the number of calories or the amount of energy that your body requires to survive in a waking but restful state. If you've ever heard of this thing called resting metabolic rate, they're about the same. There's a slight variation. But it is, like I said, what we talk about when we talk about our metabolism. So what your heart needs to pump, your lungs need to exchange oxygen, etc. Then we have to take into account what we do in our day-to-day life, so our daily activity level. That includes just getting up and coming to work. Sitting upright at work, the act of getting in your car and driving. Even if we don't do a whole lot on top of that, we do have to take into account the being out of the waking state in bed. Then we have our planned exercise. So we like to consider planned exercise as anything that gets your heart rate up for at least 10 minutes or more. I know you guys are doing a lot more than 10 minutes of exercise though, being in FitTrip. But you see why calories out is a little bit more complicated than calories in? Yeah. In is just what you're choosing to eat and drink, and calories out is a little bit more complex. The other thing I find fascinating is depending on the amount of planned exercise that you're doing, let's say you're not in FitTrip, calories out, your largest portion of your calories out is probably coming from your survival, from your metabolism. You guys may not be in that situation because of the exercise that you're doing with FitTrip, but keep that in mind. It's a pretty large number. So what we need to do to determine our total calories is do the math that's going to come up here in a minute. But first you have to set your goal. So what is your goal? Are you planning to maintain your weight while you go through FitTrip? Do you want to gain weight because you're looking to just put on muscle? Do you want to lose weight in this process too? We all know what the goals are. But I want you to come up with a little bit of a goal in your mind personally. And then when we get to our calculations, I want you to, if weight loss is a goal, which is often what I hear, I want you to be able to do that calculation. We're going to go through it then. But healthy rate of weight loss is 1/2 pound to 2 pounds per week. Okay, so it's, again,